I'm explaining a film from 2021 titled Halloween Kills. This story begins with Deputy Frank Hawkins, who accidentally shoots his partner dead, while trying to save him from Michael Myers, the one holding him. He also prevents Dr. Samuel Loomis from executing Michael. 40 years later, on October 31, 2018, after being stabbed and left to die by Dr. Ranbir Sartain, Hawkins is found by Cameron Elam, who calls an ambulance. Hawkins expresses sorrow for not authorizing Michael's death and threatens to murder him. Michael, filled with rage, wrath, and vengeance, began terrorizing and exacting vengeance on the residents of Haddonfield one by one. Meanwhile, Tommy Doyle, together with fellow survivors Marion Chambers, Lindsay Wallace, and Cameron's father, Lonnie Elam, is commemorating the 40th anniversary of Michael's captivity. Firefighters responding to Laurie Strode's burning house mistakenly unintentionally unleash Michael, who slaughters them with their own equipment. Michael managed to escape and brutally massacred everyone he met. If you think with common sense, everything that Michael did was beyond our understanding as humans, you could say that Michael had gone mad and couldn't use his common sense anymore. Meanwhile, the residents of Haddonfield are dressing up in various eerie costumes to celebrate Halloween night. Residents began to tell their memories or experiences from when they were younger one by one, unaware that Michael was out there in action. Laurie, her daughter Karen, and her granddaughter Allison are transported to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where Laurie has emergency surgery and loses a significant amount of blood from the knife wound she sustained while Michael murders Laurie's neighbors before returning to Haddonfield. Apparently Michael almost killed him, but Laurie managed to survive despite having to endure serious injuries. Karen, whose hands are covered in blood, begins to wash and clean herself at the hospital, where her mother is being treated. The doctors began operating on Laurie, leaving Karen and her daughter Allison to pray and hope that their mother and grandma would both be successful and recover normally. The doctor predicted that the procedure would take a long time since the incision wound in Laurie's tummy was so huge. Karen and Allison reassured each other that everything would be all right after the loss of Ray Nelson, Karen's husband and Allison's father, who was brutally killed by Michael Myers. Meanwhile, a husband and wife are speaking in another location, where the wife is playing with a drone in her home, unaware that Michael is on his way there. When Michael manages to sneak into the house, and prepares to kill them both. The husband told the wife to call the police, but suddenly he was brutally attacked by Michael to death and eventually bleeds to death. Meanwhile, the wife tried to stop Michael by hitting him with a bottle, but instead she was killed by Michael by sticking a neon light shard into her neck, which eventually died. Not only that, but to ensure the husband and wife were dead, Michael repeatedly stabbed the husband, while the woman could only watch with resignation, eventually dying from a terrible cut on her neck. As the situation in the city got more chaotic, the police arrived to investigate the issue. Michael kills people mercilessly. He has black eyes, thus he doesn't care who he kills, whether or not he knows the person he is about to kill. Meanwhile, news of the bus accident in which the convicts were going was shown on television the other day, including the 2 inmates who managed to escape. Then the authorities advised residents to stay at home, unless there was an urgent need to go out. Realizing this, the people who were partying dispersed. A couple was about to become the next victim by Michael. When they were about to go home, the man came back into the bar because he had missed something at the bar, while the woman went first to the car. How surprised the woman was to see someone she mistook for Michael Myers seated in the rear seat. The woman dashed to the pub to meet up with her beau. When neighbors gathered to the automobile to surround Michael Myers, the car abruptly drove off the road and collided with a structure, causing it to halt. When approached, it was discovered that the driver had disappeared, leaving a mystery for the homeowners. In other news, a couple living in Michael Myers' previous home spent Halloween alone. They didn't realize Michael was on their way until later. They were taken aback by the actions of a teenager dressed in a costume and scaring them. To frighten the teenager, they recounted that once, when Michael Myers was still living in the house, he killed his sister who was on the top floor of the house. Hearing the story, the teenagers fled in fear, and they went back into the house. A wireless emergency alert informs Tommy, Marion, Lindsay, and Lonnie about Michael's murdering spree. Vanessa, a bar customer, allegedly finds Michael in her car, but the driver wrecks and flees unobserved. Tommy organizes a gang of enraged Haddonfield locals to track down and murder Michael. Meanwhile, at the hospital, numerous police officers arrive to question Allison and Karen about the calamity that was befalling her. One of the detectives informs Karen that Michael Myers is still alive and well, and is presently roaming the streets of Haddonfield. Karen is shocked and the detective informed that Michael is still alive, and withholds that information from Lori to allow her to recover. Allison reconciles with Cameron, her ex-boyfriend, and she joins Tommy's mob to avenge her own father's death. Lori and Hawkins both awaken in the same room and reminisce about their former relationship.
Lori.
Nurse, will you do me a favor? Help out my friend here. Make it a double.
Allison reunites with her boyfriend. They join forces with other citizens to devise a plan on how to defeat Michael Myers. The citizens have assembled, and tonight they will assault Michael Myers. When it was discovered that there were still residents playing outdoors at night, they advised them to go home since the scenario and surroundings outside were dangerous. Michael arrived out of nowhere and nonchalantly assaulted them. Michael murders the residents he meets one by one in a heinous manner. But there is one woman who has escaped Michael's pursuit and is hiding under a bridge. Karen hasn't notified Lori that Michael is still alive and frightening people at the hospital since Lori's health is still precarious. But Lori seems suspicious that things weren't going well. Residents continued the ambush and attack on Michael Myers. They were shocked by a very sad sight when several bodies were found lying in a park. Meanwhile, at the hospital, things were getting worse. Because the people congregated there because they were terrified of Michael Myers, one thing is certain, the situation out there is no longer safe. In the middle of the chaos, residents began to declare that no matter what happened, they would fight Michael Myers' evil tonight. Suddenly, a patient believed to be a resident of Michael Myers visited the hospital to seek assistance, and because the residents were sick of Michael, they pursued a person who turned out not to be Michael Myers. Karen realized this. She tried to help him by hiding him in a room, but because of the anger of the residents who were already so angry, the man ended up committing suicide by jumping down to his death. Because of the chaos that occurred at the hospital, Lori finally finds out that Michael is still alive. Lori, feeling called by Michael's resurrection, leaves the hospital by injecting painkillers, despite Karen's prohibition and her continued hospital rest. Return to Michael's previous residence, where the couple is enjoying a lovely evening. They were abruptly disturbed by a disturbance from behind, which turned out to be Michael. They were eventually slaughtered one by one in a terrible manner. While warning the Haddonfield community to stay inside their houses, Marion, Vanessa, and her husband Marcus are killed by Michael. Lindsay escapes and is found alive by Tommy, Lonnie, Allison, and Cameron. The group map out Michael's path and his victim's location and deduce that he is heading towards his childhood home. Tommy transports Lindsay to the hospital, where he meets former Haddonfield Sheriff Lee Brackett, whose daughter Annie was murdered in 1978, and informs Lori about Michael's survival. As Lori prepares to leave the hospital, Michael murders the current owners of his home across town. Lance Tovely, a runaway inmate from Smith's Grove Psychiatric Hospital and Vanessa's vehicle driver, comes and is mistaken for Michael. Tommy's gang follows him around the hospital before Karen learns he isn't Michael. Despite her attempts to calm the mob and help Lance, he jumps out a window to his death. Lori urges Karen to work with Tommy and Brackett to hunt Michael down. Elsewhere, Lonnie enters Michael's house alone and is slain. Allison and Cameron hurry inside and discover his body before being assaulted and murdered by Michael. When Allison and her boyfriend arrive at Michael's previous house, they discover that the owner has died. Then Michael attacks him and his boyfriend, but unfortunately for Dylan, who is finally killed by Michael. Karen and the citizens lure Michael into a trap. They were able to encircle him and then gang up on Michael until he died. Karen stabs Michael in the back with a pitchfork, snatches his mask, and teases him to follow her as Michael prepares to murder Allison. She leads Michael into Tommy's mob, who swarm, attack, and seemingly kill him. When the mob disperses, Michael recovers and massacres the entire mob, including Tommy and Brackett. Back at Michael's house, Karen walks upstairs to investigate as Allison receives medical treatment. As Lori looks out of her hospital room, Michael comes and stabs Karen to death in Judith Meyer's former bedroom. That concludes the recap. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to remain up to date with film recaps. Your support would be appreciated. I hope to see you next time.